Hello everyone, my name is Owen, and today we're going to be going over three common variable types in the Java language, and those are the string, the int, and the double. So I want to take a brief moment to talk about what each one of these is and what it can do and what it can house. So the first one that we have is a string, and a string can hold either a word or a phrase. So for example, it could hold hi, or something other. It can hold a word, or it can even hold a whole phrase, like so. And the second one is an int, and this stands for integer. So what an integer does is it holds a whole number. So for example, int v equals 5. Alright? And before I go more in depth on the integer, I'm also going to talk about the double at the same time. For these kind of go in similar terms. So an integer, unlike a double, can only hold a whole number. It cannot have any floating place values. Not even, it can't be 5.342, and it can't even be 5.0. It cannot have a decimal after its first number. Or after its last number, sorry. And unlike a double, which can hold 6.4, and it can hold, a range, not an R, but it can hold a range of numbers after its decimal point. And those are called floating points, by the way. So, another important thing about a double is that you can even type in double D equals 6, or something like that. A double, unlike an int, which can't have anything after a floating point, it's not like a double. A double is somewhat like an int in the sense that an integer, in the sense that it is capable of just putting in a whole number, and when it prints out, you'll get 6.0, if you can see that. So it's not going to have random numbers after the point, if you put it this way, but it will still make it give it floating points. It'll just put 0.0 after it if you don't put anything after a decimal point here. So back to string. I'll talk you through what I've just done with string. Okay, so what I've done right here is I've declared the variable type to be a string, and I've given it the name. So if I were to put a semicolon right here and ignore the rest of this code, I would simply be declaring my variable. However, because I've also given it a value of, hi, my name is Owen, I've done two things. One, I've declared it, and then I've also initialized it by assigning it a string, a value. So another thing that you could also do, which I'll touch on briefly, is I could just declare it on one line, and then come down and put in name equals hi, and that would be initializing it on a separate line. So you can also do that if for some reason you might need to, which you might run into later on in the future. You might actually need to. So another thing, which is pretty cool that you can do, and that Java allows you to do, is you can do int v, and t and d. And what I've done here is I've declared multiple variables on one line. I can't actually use v because I already used it up above, so I'll change that. But you can declare them on multiple lines, and you can even initialize them. And you can do this, I'm just using int as an example. You can also use this with double, or you can use it with a string if you wish. It's just something I like to go over. And another important place I'd like to touch on, because a lot of beginners can make mistakes, is naming both. I want to go over names, what's allowed and what isn't allowed, and also the naming convention that people use. So the first part is the name. I guess I'll just use this as an example, but I'd like to point out that names of your variables cannot start with a number. They can start with either two things. They can either start with an underscore or a letter, and nothing else. So that's pretty much the important part. They can have an underscore in the middle, and a conventional thing to do if you're using two different words to name your variable, you can either have name and then underscore hi, or you can do name and then separate. You can either separate your words through an underscore, or you can make the second word start with a capital letter, and that is a very common way to do things. Is to do that. So I guess I can show you guys just how it works real quick. Name hi, and I actually need to change my name down here. Be sure that if you do declare and initialize separately, that you'll need to change the name down here when you initialize to whatever it is that you declared. And don't worry too much about what I'm writing right here. I'm just doing this to make things easy, I guess. I'm only going to show you the first three that I typed. D. Okay. So what I've done here, I'm just going to quickly print these variables. Both, I'm going to print name hi, which just says hi. I'm going to print v, and I'm also going to print d. So as you can see, it printed, the first one printed hi, the second one 5, and the last one 6.0. Like I mentioned earlier, even if you just put 6, it's a double, so it's gonna give it a value after its decimal point, even if it's 0. So with that, I'm gonna end this video. And that is all the information that I really have on those basic on those basic variables. We will, however, get into other variable types. There's a multitude of them. We'll touch on those later though. So for now, don't worry about it. And for now, you can practice with those variables all you want. So thanks. That ends this video, and I'll see you in the next one.